Thank you.
Yes, yes, all right. Yes, they are.
That's not yours, is it? That's not yours, is it? Okay. I think so. Or two. I was thinking like orange.
Grab a stand, grab a stand.
I got him.
Good morning. Welcome to Auburn Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, located on occupied ancestral land of the Muskogee Nation and housed in a building constructed by free, formerly enslaved African Americans. My name is Jim Newton, and I am your service associate today. We welcome all of you to our service, especially those of you who are searching for a spiritual home. Many of us were once, too, seeking for something larger than ourselves to which we could belong, a sense of rootedness to hold us as we create meaning together. We do that well here, though not perfectly. In this congregation, we strive not for perfection, but for authenticity and connection. Whether it's your first time in worship with us or your 100th time, we hope that you'll find here questions that stretch you, people to befriend you, and liberal religious values that challenge you to join us in loving boldly, living justly, and welcoming radically. I call your attention to the announcements that are printed on the back of the order of service. Please read these for important information about fellowship life. Spoken announcements will be heard at the end of the hour. On behalf of the members of the fellowship, I extend a special welcome to all visitors who are joining us for the first time, and for those of you who still feel like visitors. If you have not already done so, please fill out the visitor book at the front near the greeters, or digitally by visiting auuf.org/visitor. You may also contact our minister, Reverend Chris Rothbauer, at minister@auuf.org with any questions or concerns you may have. As we prepare for our service this morning, please remember to turn your phone and other electronic devices to silent. Let us move into the service, willing to be authentic with each other, honest within ourselves, and open to connection in all its forms.
Our opening words are from Israel B. Fardy. The road that lies ahead of us is a long one, and the pace of progress will sometimes be glacially slow. Never forget that glaciers over time can carve out grand canyons and great lakes. Moving tectonic plates can rise up mountains over millennia, or they can explode awe-inspiring volcanoes in milliseconds. Our commitment to love and justice can do the same.
Once when my heart was passion-free to learn of things divine, the soul of nature suddenly outpoured itself in mine, and for a moment's interval, the earth, the sky, the sea, my soul encompassed each and all as they encompassed me.
We'd like our challenge this morning with these words from Barnaby Fetter. We kindle a flame we trust will lead us forward as we travel in unknown lands, where the question, shall I ever get there, resounds. A clear, pure note in every silence. The Rainbow Chalice candle for today's service was donated by Timothy Burke and Jamie Marchant in honor of their son, Jesse Allen Marchant Burke, who senselessly lost his life on October 12, 2020, at the age of 24. This week marked 2 years since Jesse's passing, and we hold all who loved him in our hearts. As is our tradition, we also light a candle in solidarity with those families separated at our southern border. Our opening hymn is hymn number 1009 in the Teal Hymnal, Meditation on Grieving.
Breathe out, breathe in.
One of the ways that we proclaim the warmth and caring of our community is by sharing our joys, concerns, and milestones. If you are joining us virtually, we invite you to type your joy, concern, or milestone in the YouTube chat box during the music for meditation. We invite those in person to, one at a time, drop a pebble into our communal bowl during music for meditation. Spoken joys and concerns will be invited following the music. I invite you, if you have a joy, concern, or milestone, to come forward one at a time and briefly share it into the microphone. To help maintain social distancing, please don't line up, but come forward after the last person has left the microphone.
Oh, yeah. I'm Connie Ressler. You might not have seen me for a while. I have a joy. Jim Newton picked me up at oh gosh, that's a bad word. What's it called again? The transportation, groom transportation. He picked me up when I flew down from our little cabin in New Hampshire and took the groom transportation to their office, and Jim Newton picked me up, and that was very nice of him. But when I saw that he was in a sling from surgery, I said, why didn't you get somebody else to do it? And he picked up, I had one large heavy suitcase, and so I don't know, I think he should have gotten somebody else. He got me in the house, and so I'm here. I'm here, and I'm healthy, and I'm glad to be back.
I'm Chris. We have two milestones. Margie celebrated her 7th birthday on Wednesday. And today, Lacey and I are celebrating 12 years of marriage as well. We were married by a small town Indiana preacher who didn't know what to do with our equitable approach to marriage. But I think we've done a pretty good job of keeping a partnership going over the years.
I have a concern. Over the past 5 weeks, I work at a pharmacy, and we have had more than I've ever seen prescriptions for canine flu. So keep an eye on your dogs and don't let them get near any dog you don't know. The other problem is the human flu is going around, and we have been giving out flu vaccines like crazy. Please, if you haven't gotten it yet and you were planning on waiting, please don't.
So right after my daughter got married, my son, who teaches history and government in a school outside of Topeka, Kansas, was nominated for the Horizon Award, which means he was selected as the best secondary school teacher in the district. Sorry, that's a second year secondary school, so it's not, but he's going to go up to the next tier of consideration. So.
Grateful for the pastor and the congregation for allowing us to place this candle up here for my son and for the support that we've had from all of you. I just wanted to say that, sorrow sometimes can change to gratitude. And I just want to tell me that I'm so grateful for him and for good friends. Thank you.
Thank you to all who shared their joys, concerns, and milestones this morning. May all the joys, concerns, and milestones of this community, those shared aloud and those held in silence, be received into the care and concern of all present. Our moment for all ages today is led by our Coordinator of Religious Education, Angela Farmer.
I invite anyone who wants to come up and do the song. I don't think my microphone is working. Let me find out. I don't think it's working. That's fine. I'm going to use this one. Do you want to show? Sure. Good morning. Today's story is I don't want to wait. Do you ever have those moments where it's like, I want it right now? Yeah. Were you that way about your birthday? Like, I can't wait for my birthday. I want my birthday. Yeah. Now you gotta wait a whole nother year. That's how that works, right? Okay. This is a book about patience. Maisie was never patient. She waited for her birthday, even when it was ages away. At school, she wouldn't wait patiently to see Miss Chen, even though there were others before her in line. Maisie hated waiting for her turn to speak in news time. She always interrupted others when they were speaking. Miss Chen said it was rude to interrupt. When Maisie got impatient, she got cross. What does cross mean? We don't really use that word so much anymore. It means angry. She would get upset. She shouted and yelled over other people so no one could hear what they were saying. One day, Miss Chen said everyone was going to make animal masks. She said all the children should paint them carefully. She said they would need to wait patiently for the paint to dry. What happens if you don't wait for the paint to dry? It'll go dripping.
Yeah,
You
put it on your face and you get the paint on your face, right? But Maisie didn't wait patiently. She didn't wait for the paint to dry at all. The paint dripped all over her. Miss Chen was cross. That afternoon after school, Rafi came to play. He brought his new game. He told Maisie that they had to take turns to roll the dice. But Maisie didn't want to wait for her turn. She snatched the dice from Rafi. Rafi was upset. You might even say he was cross. That Saturday, Maisie's big sister Lola came to stay. Maisie loved Lola. She was really good fun. But Lola phoned to say her bus was late. Mum said Maisie would have to wait patiently for her sister to arrive. Maisie scowled crossly and tapped her foot. There's that word again. Later that afternoon, Lola arrived. Maisie wanted to play shops with her immediately, but Lola said she wanted to have a chat with Mum first. She said she'd play shops after that.
Maisie got very cross. She stamped upstairs to her bedroom and slammed the door hard. After a while, Maisie calmed down. She wished she hadn't stamped her feet. She wished she hadn't slammed the door. Do you ever get mad and do a thing and then you're like, oh, maybe that was not the best. She went to find Lola. Maisie told her sister she was sorry. Lola said everyone feels impatient sometimes. She told Maisie she felt impatient when her bus was late, so she took a deep breath. Let's all take a deep breath. And thought about other things. She said that made her feel better. Maisie said that if she felt impatient again, maybe she could take another deep breath and think about other things too. The next day, Lola and Maisie went to the park. Maisie ran to the slide, but Rafi got there first. He was going down very, very slowly down the slide. Maisie took a deep breath. She looked for shapes in the clouds and waited patiently for her turn. Do you see what she sees in the clouds, Penelope?
A dragon!
Yes! Who loves dragons? Penelope's favorite.
Yeah, because they have powers.
Then Lola said it was time for ice creams, but the ice cream man was very busy, so Maisie had to wait patiently at the back of the line. She counted all the different flavors. She even made up some of her own. That looks like a crazy flavor. At last, it was Maisie's turn. The man said she had waited very patiently. He gave her an extra dollop of ice cream for being so patient. Maisie said it was so much nicer to be patient. Yeah. Especially when there's ice cream involved, right? Right?
Please join me in the spirit of contemplation, whatever way feels right, with these words from Richard S. Gilbert. In the midst of this whirling day, in the hectic rush to be doing, in the frantic part of life, pause here for a moment. Catch your breath, relax your body, loosen your grip on life. Consider that our lives are always unfinished business. Imagine that the picture of our being is never complete. Allow your life to be a work in progress. Do not hurry to mold the masterpiece. Do not rush to finish the picture. Do not be impatient to complete the drawing. From beckoning birth to dawning death, we are in progress, and always there is more to be done. Do not let the incompleteness weigh on your spirit. Do not despair that imperfection marks your every day. Do not fear that we are still in the making. Let us instead be grateful that the world is still to be created. Let us give thanks that we can be more than we are. Let us celebrate the power of the incomplete, for life is always unfinished business. Let's
Our religious community is like a river formed from the many streams of our lives that meet and merge and flow to the sea. As members and friends of this religious community, we share our time, our energy, our creativity, imagination, and vision, our talents, skills, and gifts, and the streams of our individual lives to create a river that is both deep and broad, a river that is made of many streams, sustains life, and refreshes the land through which it flows. But the river of this community also depends on our shared financial support that makes real our shared values and vision. We will now receive an offering for the support of this religious community and its work in the world. You are invited to give generously and joyfully as you are willing and able. To make a donation online via PayPal, please visit auuf.org/donate. Please indicate in the notes whether your donation is for your pledge or the offering. If you are writing a check, please make your check payable to AUUF with a note on the memo line about whether it is for the offering or your pledge. Drop it in the offering bowl or mail to P.O. Box 669, Auburn, Alabama 36831. The offering will now be gratefully received.
Things in life are free, and they're right before your eyes. You gotta stop and smell the roses. You gotta count your many blessings every day. Find a way to heaven. It's a rough and rocky road. If you don't stop and smell the roses along the way. Boy went to work this morning in the city.
from Dawn, Star, Sarah's, or Shell. Knit 6, purl 6, sets of 2 rows, 4 rows, 6 rows, up to 12, patterns repeating, steady, soothingly same. This is not what life is like. Life is like picking up a tousled hunk of yarn pulled out of the basket by an impatient child looking for a string too many times. You find an end, you follow the thread for a while, and sooner or later you hit a tangle, knots and twists and loops all mixed up together. Sometimes I sit there and untangle it, pulling little by little until I have one piece stretched out and can go on to the next one. Sometimes I grab a pair of scissors and cut. Enough, I only needed a little anyway. But sometimes I hold the tangle in my hand, amazed for a moment at the complexity, the mess. I look at it and think, this can't be solved, it just is. There are patterns, connections, confusing ones, frustrating ones, the thread turning back on itself, as life also does. The tangled things will always be here, in this moment I am living through right now, whatever comes after. Even if I work through this, even if I cut the cord and walk away, look at the tangled knot in the yarn, look at how it hurts.
This past year, Calvin and I were gifted memberships to the Capri Theater in Montgomery by someone who found out how much we enjoy independent film and generously gave us a nice present. And so we've been spending a lot of our weekend nights going to Montgomery and seeing films that aren't being shown anywhere else in this region. Last night's film, God's Country, was described by one reviewer as a slow burner that rewards patient viewers at the end. And indeed, it was one of the most amazing films I've seen in a while. It's not a happy film. Don't go there expecting to have a happy ending or to leave thinking that everything was great. It has deep themes of race, class, generational poverty, and isolation and grief that resound throughout. And yet, we talked more about this film on the car ride home than many others we've seen lately. We got home that night, and I made the mistake of logging on to Rotten Tomatoes, curious what other people were thinking. And that one review that called it a slow burner that rewards patient viewers kept ringing in my mind as I was reading the user reviews and wondering if we'd seen the same film. Indeed, one was really, really mad that it was called a thriller even though it wasn't back-to-back action, like the Fast and the Furious movies. But there was one interesting comment from a positive reviewer that said they didn't understand all of the negative reviews, that it seemed like people just wanted all the details of film handed to them on a silver platter nowadays right away so they didn't have to think about it. And indeed, it seems like most of the films that make a lot of money nowadays are films that are easy to see, that don't take patience, that have sort of a sense of urgency in their plotting. And there's nothing wrong with that. I've seen my fair share of Marvel movies. And yet, when we're confronted with a truly great film, a work of art, It's interesting how so many people get mad that it's actually expecting them to take time and think about what just happened in the film. I've seen this time and time again in the world lately. Indeed, it seems that since youth, we're trained in a sense of urgency. It used to stress me out so much in elementary school, and teachers would give me a standardized test and tell me, you have 20 minutes to complete this section. And granted, most of the time I got done in 20 minutes, often with time to spare, but just having that sense of urgency looming over me made the entire thing so much worse of an experience than it had to have been. We're taught we need everything right now. Fast food, fast cars, fast films, fast television. Indeed, at the end of the month, I'll be taking a road trip to New Mexico, and people are surprised to find out that I'm driving. I'm not driving because I hate planes. I'm driving because I want the experience of driving through that part of the country. And no, it won't be the fastest way I could possibly get there, but is it always about the urgency? Now, I don't want to put down urgency wholesale. Indeed, there are times when we should be urgent. For instance, the current social justice and environmental justice issues that are facing our world are urgent. We shouldn't have to wait for the resolution of them. We shouldn't have to plod on for decades with little to no progress, and it's unfair to ask those directly impacted by them to wait. We need urgency because, well, they might just make our species go out of existence. In this case, urgency can drive us to find solutions. We also need them in times of crises. If I see a person walking out into the street who's about to be hit by a car, I'm not going to sit there and deliberate about whether I'm going to tell them or not or try to pull them back. I'm going to try to help them before they get hit by the car. It's for safety in that case. And there are needs of the moment that require a sense of urgency. If you like to cook, you know that if you ignore the recipe's recommended cooking time, you might not come out with something that's terribly edible. If you decide that, oh, this pie can bake for 2 hours while I read my book, it'll be fine. Let me know how that works out. I speak from experience. I'm the only person I ever knew who burnt ramen noodles. But the problem is that for every one of these times when we should have a sense of urgency, we have other times when it seems like urgency is being imposed on a situation. And some writers have taken to calling this urgency culture, a widespread notion that folks and resources are available at all times to respond to any and all requests, whether personal or professional. And urgency culture reflects an expectation to be on demand at all times. It reduces us to tools, demanding that we help facilitate whatever is around us, and there's no taking into account other obligations, much less our own personal time for self-care and family care. The pandemic in many ways exasperated urgency culture. It created an illusion that we have more free time than we do because of how often we're at home. The fact that so many people got to work from home during the pandemic meant that for many, the boundaries between personal and professional life that they had previously kept were suddenly blurred or even non-existent. I'm sure you've all seen the video that went viral from a BBC News interview where this world's leading financial expert had his kids suddenly barge into the room in the middle of a Zoom interview on national television with the BBC. And as cute as that is, I'm sure he felt horror in the moment. The result has been a lot of burnt out. A lot of people are feeling like they don't have a lot to give right now, like they're overwhelmed. The things that once nurtured many people aren't helping anymore. For instance, if you used to have a ritual where you went and meditated in a particular room in your house, and during the pandemic you had to turn that into a home office, you might not find the same comfort that you once did. But it's more than simple personal burnout. Urgency culture has been called a symptom of white supremacy culture. And let's break this down for a minute, because the assumption that a lot of people hear the first time they hear this is that this means that all urgency is racist, and of course it's not. But what urgency culture does do is it pushes us ahead into answers before we can really be inclusive in looking for solutions. Before we can be democratic in our thought processes and decision-making, and without necessarily thinking and acting long-term. It frequently results in sacrificing potential allies for quick or highly visible results. And often the people that are sacrificed first are the people with the least amount of power to speak up for themselves. It privileges those who process information quickly. I wonder how many of you have been in a Zoom call where it seems like everyone's just talking back and forth without any break between talking, and it's like, how do I even break into this? It reproduces either or thinking because of the stated need to reach decisions quickly, and it makes us harder to distinguish what is really urgent from what feels urgent. I think there's something in us that, because of the survival mechanism, makes us think everything has to be urgent, and yet it doesn't. And indeed, urgency culture makes it more difficult to respond to real urgency because it disconnects us from a felt sense of what is actually urgent and what we can take more time on. It makes us feel like everything has to be done, not just now, but yesterday. And it makes us lose sight of the forest for the trees. Overcoming urgency culture means embracing a diversity of ways of doing things. We learn to embrace different perspectives. We become less entrenched in how things have to be. And we are less dismissive of cultures that are difficult from our own. I find it especially interesting, this topic, being a minister, because churches are often hubs for urgency culture. I remember when I was discerning what type of ministry I wanted to go into, I called up a colleague of mine who dedicated her entire career to interim ministry. And I asked her, why did you choose interim ministry over all other possible forms of ministry? I think I was expecting to hear something like she was dedicated to the process of shepherding congregations through transition, but her answer surprised me. She told me she picked interim ministry because it was the only ministry where she felt like she could ever get anything done. She was only there 2 years, and by golly, she better get to work or she's not going to do anything. And it made me really think. Change tends to move at a glacial pace in congregations and other organizations. It takes time to move people from point A to point B. But an impatience with getting things done quickly can lead to a lot of conflict in congregations. I've seen it happen. And indeed, you all have seen it happen. And even when you do go at a reasonable pace, it can still seem too fast. Trust me, I've heard the story about the chairs. Those of you who have been here a while know what I'm talking about. We need to have ways to figure out what is urgent and what isn't. And I'm going to start this discussion with something that I hadn't planned to include. But I want to say that if you're personally taking on so many things that you're feeling overwhelmed and burnt out, I bet either not all of them are urgent, or the organization needs to find a different way of doing things. But there isn't a list or guide that I can give you to figure out what is urgent and what isn't. Sometimes it's intuitive. And it will take time figuring out what is and isn't. I can tell you from experience that unless someone is in imminent danger, it can probably take at least a meeting or two of people talking. But this can be especially difficult to decide because even an action within urgent needs can be non-urgent. Let me explain that. I think about a social justice action that occurred in Louisville while I was there in 2018. A group of activists had decided to chain themselves to the federal building to protest the deportation of immigrants that was happening there. And they could have done it quickly and in a haphazard fashion that would have barely caused notice, but they didn't. They took nearly 2 months of planning on platforms like Telegram to figure out how they were going to make it happen. And indeed, I have been in social justice protests where people who are so desperate to make a mark on the world do things that they really hadn't thought through very well. I remember being in one protest where a guy got mad at one of the police officers and in the middle of 5 news crews jumped on the police officer's back. That probably wasn't urgent, unless the police officer was actively killing someone. I want to propose that we become reflective and contemplative in deciding what is and isn't urgent. This involves asking the right questions. What are the questions that need to be asked right then in the moment to decide what needs to be done? And it also involves involves listening to a diversity of perspectives. To give an example, congregations sometimes become entrenched with the older people in the congregation, the ones who have been coming for decades, having all the power to decide the course of the congregation. I'm not saying that's this congregation, but I've seen it happen so many times that people look around and realize there are no parents, and there's no one there who's been coming less than 20 years. If all the people at the table look, sound, and have the same experiences as you probably don't have a diversity of experiences happening. And it means listening for the right response, not just the response we want. I can be as bad as anyone about wanting things right now. There was a great classic episode of The Simpsons where Lisa had decided she wanted to try to become more like her family. And so when Bart and Homer were complaining about how long dinner was taking, Lisa said, well, if she'd started 10 minutes ago, it'd be ready now. 10 minutes earlier, it'd be ready now. And that's me sometimes. Is it ever you that I think, well, if we'd started 10 minutes earlier, maybe we'd already be done? You can ask questions like, what would happen if we didn't do this right away? And have we involved everyone who needs to be involved? And do we have what we need to implement the plan? Do we have the people and resources to make it happen? And do we have a commitment to see things through? There's nothing more disheartening than putting a lot of energy in something that just fizzles out. This is definitely a systemic issue, but I want to propose that it's also a personal issue, because we each need to know our limits. There is always going to be something else in the world that needs our attention. Some cause to take up, some action to do, some personal or familial crisis that we need to attend to. And yet, if we don't take time for ourselves and know our limits, we will be of no use to any of those other things. Overfunctioning doesn't help anyone or anything, including the thing that we're overfunctioning for. We need to understand what is a reasonable amount of time and effort we can expect from ourselves, and we need to know when to step away to find our center again. Your free time is not your available time. And that, I think, is something that people need to hear a lot. Your free time is not your available time. Just because your appointment book or Google Calendar doesn't have something on it, that doesn't mean you're available. Set your boundaries on when and where you will work and communicate them clearly to the people who need to know them. You don't owe answering the phone at 1 a.m. for a non-urgent question. If someone's calling me at 1 a.m., they better be in crisis or dying. And support others in dismantling urgency culture. I've made a point that's a lot of times we can be very complicit in urgency culture, because what we do is we end up allowing overfunctioners to overfunction because it's easier than stepping in and doing it, part of it ourselves, or telling them maybe they shouldn't be doing that. It's being aware of how much we're asking of others. Do I call Laura for every single thing I need done because I hope she'll say yes? I'm picking on Laura, but I wonder how many people feel like that person sometimes. Don't take advantage of people who are immersed in urgency culture, because maybe if we don't take advantage of them, they'll find ways to break free of it themselves and normalize taking care of yourself. Self-care is not self-centeredness, to paraphrase Audre Lorde. Self-care can be a radical act of doing things in a different way in the world. It's not going and buying an expensive spa day. It can be as easy as deciding you're not going to work tonight. Activist Bayo Akomolafe once said, "The times are urgent. Let us slow down." Maybe that's advice our world needs to hear right now. Not everything is urgent. And what would it look like, even in these unprecedented times, to slow down and find new ways of doing things? And I think UU congregations can be part of this change. What if we didn't burn out our people? What if we gave space for people to bloom into the best people they could be? So look for ways of dismantling urgency culture in all of the organizations and families you're in. And be the change that you want to see. Maybe you might still want to tell your child that there's a time limit, because otherwise you might be waiting for years to have the dishes done. But maybe it's also about teaching them that they can sit down afterwards and have a cup of coffee with you and just relax. And maybe then we'll truly understand that sometimes slowing down can be really good. May it be so. Our closing hymn is number 396 in the great hymnal, "I Know This Rose Will Open."
I know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open. I know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open. I know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open.
Please join me in extinguishing our chalice. You will find the words in your order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Please be our guest today after the service for our coffee hour here in the sanctuary. This is an opportunity to chat with people about the service or just how their week went. If you are not signed up for our email list, please make sure to do so to receive updates about ways to connect. You can find information on signing up at our website, auf.org/subscribe. I invite anyone with a spoken announcement to come forward at this time.
Just a reminder, I mentioned it last week that the Auburn Community Band will have a concert tomorrow night at the old high school, now the junior high school at Dean and Sanford. It's one of the nicer programs I've played in years. At 7.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Noriko, and thank you for those who brought the items for Diana's Pantry collection. The basket is right there. So if you forgot something today, and if you're willing to do that, you can always leave them, even if it's not the third Sunday, and then we're going to deliver it on Sunday. Okay? Thank you.
Just another reminder, next Sunday at 11:30, we'll be meeting in the Bush Center to do some planning for the campus ministry. So I hope to see you there.
Humanist Potluck is tonight at 5 here in the sanctuary.
Two things. First, during second hour today in the Upper Bush Center, we'll be having the second session of Spirit in Practice, and today we'll be talking about personal spiritual practices, and especially focusing on meditation and prayer. So if you're interested in exploring different spiritual practices, come over at 12:15, get your coffee and come over at 12:15 and join us, or 11:15. Thank you, Chris, for looking at me like, did I get that wrong? Also, if you didn't hear the announcement last week that CJ made during potluck, the board did decide to make a major change to the COVID policy starting at the beginning of November. So starting at the beginning of November, masks will be strongly recommended, and congregational singing will resume starting with that first service in November.
Hi, I'm Carter. I'm on the board of our local PFLAG. We are an LGBTQIA organization that focuses on education, support, and advocacy. We meet here every third Thursday, and that is this week. In light of their sermon, it felt appropriate to say we're going to talk about upcoming elections. I have been on the board for I don't know how many years, and I definitely need to roll off. Our president needs to roll off, and we really need people. The roles are not specific. We just need people willing to give us their time. So I encourage you, if you'd like to come, it will be here this Thursday at 6:30. You don't have to be an officer. That's not just why I say that, but again, every third Thursday, and that includes this week. Thanks.
Please join us for our Sun benediction.
Our benediction is by Heather Ryan Starr. May whatever gatherings or activities we engage in this Sunday afternoon help restore us, our connection to one another, our sense of hope, beauty, and fun in this world, our deep knowing that we have to take care of ourselves and each other with love and joy if we are to soulfully survive this world's mayhem. Amen. Blessed be, and go in peace.